welcome to my seed starting room. It may be cold and blustery outside, but in this seed starting room, things are happening. I'm not exaggerating when I say I haven't seen a blade of grass or a living flower outside in months. This is my first year in this garden space, so what is currently covered under a couple feet of snow is just grass. And it's crazy to think that in just a couple months, that area will be completely transformed into what I hope will be a bountiful garden. To give myself the best chances at having a bountiful year in my new garden space, I have started some seeds, and these are the seeds that I think you should really get going on if you're wanting to have a beautiful spring and make the most of your harvest. So let's get into it. So first things first are your onions. This goes for really onions and leeks in the allium family, as well as shallots. You really want to give them time. They are a slower growing plant, and we want to make sure that we get really big bulbs. So in order to kind of give them their best chance, we got to start them early. So these were actually started mid-January, but don't worry if you haven't started them yet. You're not too late. I would say February is kind of when you want to have them started by. If you don't have them started by February, it's not like you can't grow onions. You absolutely can. I would just maybe consider seeing what your local garden center has in terms of onion starts in the spring. One caution before you pick your onion varieties. There are 3 different types of onion classifications: long day, intermediate day, and short day. And these are basically descriptions of what they need in order to facilitate bulb formation. So this takes into account a couple different things, including the latitude at which you live, as well as the hours of daylight you get in a day. And here in Zone 5B in Ontario, we really thrive with long day onions. So this variety is Patterson. It is a long day storage onion, and it should go quite well in my area. However, if you're living somewhere more in the southern parts of the United States, you might look at a short day. Johnny's Seeds has a really nice resource for a couple different quite well-known varieties. So I will link that in the description below. They have some information about long day, short day, although I would recommend you do your own research as well. But they also have a nice little map specifically to help out our friends in the United States, but the latitudes and longitudes are also helpful for us Canadians to just give you an idea of where you should be looking. So I'm a bit of a greedy gardener. I like to test the limits on spacing, which I'm trying to do better at this year, but I also like different varieties. I like to try out different things, see which one's my favorite. If I have one that's already my favorite, you know, is it still my favorite? I'm actually growing 3 different varieties of storage onion this year, and that consists of Patterson, which are these ones right here, which are looking great. I have Frontier storage onion. Again, this is a long day onion. It's looking great. And then I do have, as an experiment, because I am also love a good experiment, because what is gardening, you know, without a little bit of trial and error, a little experiment, a little pushing the boundaries, which I do enjoy doing quite a bit. So I do have an intermediate day onion I'm also growing. So it should be fine. Intermediate day are a little bit more versatile. They do tend to do okay kind of with any day length, and as long as your latitude is compatible with the variety, in theory it should work. So it's a trial. Not growing that many of that particular variety, but that variety is called Calibra, and I'm excited about it. I've heard good things. So this tray is filled with half leeks and half crop failure of 2025. So I had started onions that I had in a seed pack from last year, and I did know better, but I always think things will work out for the best. Onion seeds don't keep well, they do not store well. So I had started this entire half of this seed tray with red onions, and as you can see, nothing came up. So I have restarted this half of the tray with onions. This one half being here is a blush onion. It's described as a pink onion, which it just got me curious. So we're starting that, and you can see we do have little babies starting to come up. So that's great. They were only started about 6 days ago. So the fact that they're just sprouting now is about right on time. That makes me happy. We will have red onion. This half also was restarted at the same time, so about 6 days ago. And they are sprouting as well. This is red wing, your traditional red onion. And it's starting to sprout. So we will have red onions this year. I'm excited about it. I didn't think I would. The leeks are doing great. They're looking good. So I'm hoping to have some nice thick leeks this year. Another thing you may have already started or wanting to be starting within the month of February are snapdragons. These little guys are cool loving flowers. They'll bloom earlier on in the season and again have a kind of a second wave more so in the fall. However, they are cut and come again. So if you cut them, keep cutting them throughout the summer, they will continue to bloom, but they do really thrive in cooler temperatures. And so you want to get them in your garden kind of as soon as you can. And they are a slow growing flower. So this is one of the ones you're going to want to start sooner rather than later. If you can in February, that's great. Early March, still okay. But you want to get them going, especially if you want to pinch them. So pinching them will create a sheer plant. Basically, you're going to take away or cut off the main growing shoot. So instead of going straight up in a line, they're going to start branching out, which will create a bushier plant, more blooms, that sort of thing, which will happen as you cut them in general. However, if you want to kind of give them that head start, and these seeds are so small that you can kind of chaos sow them, sprinkle them on top of your seedling cells. That's big enough, you can separate them and transplant them to bigger pots or their own singular seedling cell. So another thing to start early on is celery, and it is a slow grower. So starting celery now will help you in the long run. Other seeds to consider starting in February would be your pepper seeds, specifically hot peppers, although I will also be starting sweet peppers in about a week. My hot peppers are already under grow lights, germinating, and that's because hot peppers, especially your super hot, so like your Carolina Reapers, those can take a long time to germinate, and peppers are slower growing plants. You really need to give them time to establish before they are able to be planted out. And that's just because peppers, if you do not have an established plant being planted into your garden, and if you have a shorter growing season like I do, for instance, you're really not going to get much of a harvest. And that's what we want, right? We want those peppers to be able to make hot sauce or stuff some bell peppers or whatever you're going to do with them. We want that harvest. So starting them now really gives you the chance to be able to have an established plant to be able to plant out whenever your temperatures kind of reach 10 degrees at night is when you're really going to want to allow them outside. The next one that I will suggest, any of your more woody herbs, so this is like rosemary and lavender, they can take a while to grow and get established, and with any of these kind of more herb type plants, the more biomass you have, like root mass you have before planting them out, the bigger and healthier the plant you're going to have. So now would be a good time to start them, especially lavender, if you have a variety that requires cold stratification, because that can take a couple weeks. So you want to get those started. In fact, any of your plants that require cold stratification, it's not the worst idea to either winter sow them or putting them in your fridge and doing your cold stratification now, so that you can actually plant those seeds in soil in the next 3 to 4 weeks, so you can have a more established plant to go out in the spring. 2 more categories I would suggest starting in February are going to be any other flowers that have a long growing period, or that you want to have a little bit more established because they're perennial and you want them to be able to survive the following winter. So like echinacea or yarrow, you can for sure go ahead and start those now. They can also take a little bit of cold, so they can go out earlier than you might plant out, say, a sunflower. So you can go ahead and start those now, or at some point in February. They don't necessarily need to be started this minute, but within the next few weeks. Anything that is cool loving, so like stock, for example, or that has a really long growing period, you are gonna want to start them now so that you can enjoy them for longer. So for instance, Stace, I always say it wrong. I grew it for the first time last year, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful plant. It is great for even drying flowers. It has like papery petals, and it dries beautifully, and it's a great filler for any bouquet you have or you want to cut throughout the summer from your garden. It's wonderful, but it is a slower grower, and if you want to enjoy it for longer, you want to have an established plant for when you plant it out. So the last grouping of what I would suggest starting in February are what I'm going to call your no chance plants. These are the plants that shouldn't grow in your area. These are the plants that you look at it and go, there's no chance that this will work, but I'm going to do it anyway. And so for me this year, this is our artichokes, our loofahs, and to a lesser extent our tea hibiscus. So these ones I would suggest looking at the package, doing some research on, but starting within the next month. So mid-February to mid-March is really when you're going to want to start them, and that's because they have a longer growing period because they're not intended for this area. It is far too cold here to ever see an artichoke just casually in someone's garden. This one I am starting now, the loofah. So from doing my own research, loofah can take up to 200 days from planting to harvest, and they do not tolerate frost. If you're like me, our last estimated frost to our first estimated frost, we have approximately 140, 150 days, which if you do that math is not enough to grow loofah. So I will be starting the loofahs in end of February, early March, to be able to give them enough time so that they are hopefully established enough to grow happily and get me a harvest. Ignoring what the packet says, starting them earlier, because the packet has to be pretty generic, right? You're going to be getting start 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost, but that is being sold to people with a variety of different zones. So the packet, while a great jumping off point, is not the be all end all in terms of what your seed starting schedule should look like. It's great for an initial look. It's great for something like tomatoes that have a fairly short growing season, and that's totally fine. But for something like a loofah, the back of the packet is not really going to be useful to you. Same, I would say, with peppers. You're gonna want to, if you have a shorter growing season, you really want to start them earlier, if you want to be able to get the yields you're hoping for. Because I have no business growing it, but that's never stopped me before. So those are the seeds I would suggest you starting in the next couple weeks. Thanks for hanging out with me this afternoon. If you're interested in seeing how I'm turning my side lot that is currently just snow and grass into my garden of my dreams, please follow along. I'd love to have you and love to share the joys of gardening with you this season. Until next time, happy seed starting.